Hi, fall starters. So today we're going to walk you through the steps that you'll need to do for your financial aid for this fall, and also walk you through things that you'll need to do each quarter, each year, some other considerations. So we are going to talk about scholarships. We're going to do a step-by-step, some other factors to consider when you're budgeting, tasks you'll need to take care of while you're in law school, and then also who to contact when you have certain financial aid issues. So to get started on scholarships, if you were awarded a scholarship, you know that information already. That scholarship is typically guaranteed for 9 quarters as long as you stay in good academic standing, don't breach academic probation. Um, it's typically for 9 quarters only because that's the length of law school. If you take a summer or another quarter where you're only taking a few hours, we can split out some of that scholarship, award it to you for that few hour quarter, and then kind of subtract that from your final quarter. But you get 9 hours worth of your scholarship. It will be awarded to you anytime that you enroll, unless you tell us otherwise, or unless you're half time. If you're less than half time, you need to tell me that you want your scholarship. If you came in with less than $24,000 a year of scholarship, after your first quarter, if you have a cumulative 3.6 GPA or higher, we will bump your award up to 8,000 a quarter. So if you came in, for example, with 18,000 a year, which is 6,000 a quarter, after those first 3 quarters, if you had that cumulative 3.6, we'd bump you up to 8,000, and any quarter thereafter where you have that cumulative 3.6. Okay, so what you need to do, and I have a step-by-step, and I certainly encourage y'all to follow the financial aid step-by-step that was in your admitted students packet. It's on the website as well. First step, going to be to file the FAFSA and complete any follow-up that they ask you to do, either on the FAFSA website or through BearWeb. Obviously, you need to make sure you have an FSA ID. You'll want to choose Baylor as a recipient. Baylor Law School is not separate when you choose us as a recipient. The FAFSA's year is fall through summer, so you will not need to file another one until a year from now, so going into next fall. Even if you choose to take some summer classes or do field placements next summer, you won't have to file a new FAFSA. All law students are independent, regardless of whether or not your family claims you on their taxes, and you don't want to choose the federal work study option. They will not award it to you, and it can slow some things down. After that, next step will be to review your award. So the financial aid office has been working through these awards, so you should be getting or will have received an email from Big Baylor Financial Aid that will go to your Baylor email address, and it'll direct you to BearWeb where you can see your award. On your award, you'll see your scholarship listed, and then your federal direct unsubsidized loan. If you filled out the FAFSA, if you filed the FAFSA, you automatically get that unsubsidized loan. So you'll just see those things listed. One thing you might see if you're a Texas resident is a Texas Tuition Equalization Grant. That is a grant offered by the state of Texas. It's not guaranteed. How much they're going to give each year varies slightly, but I have seen that on there this year. So that's just another grant for you Texas residents. So kind of figuring out how much aid that you can take. The number that you're going to look at is cost of attendance. So in BearWeb, you'll see a budget set up, has a bunch of line items. That is not necessarily what you're going to be charged. It just gives you a sense of how they came up with this budget. This budget adding up to cost of attendance. Cost of attendance is what they think you might need for tuition fees, housing, books, living expenses, all of that. It's currently $32,376 per quarter, anytime that you're full-time. I say that for the fall and the spring. For the winter and the summer, if you're here for the summer and definitely for the winter, it will be slightly less than that because insurance is not built in. You are not required to get insurance unless you're an international student, but they build it into the cost of attendance in case you want to get it. And they build it in based upon Baylor student health insurance amounts, which are charged twice a year. That cost of attendance is based on the assumption that you will take 14 hours. That's the average number of hours that a full-time law student takes. But you are eligible for that same cost of attendance when you take at least 10 hours, which is full-time, regardless of how many hours you take. So that cost of attendance, the amount of aid that you will get will stay the same whether or not you're taking 10 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours. Something to know is that the university is on a 2-semester, 1-summer system. So the way that they package financial aid is fall through spring is packaged together. And then if you ever took summer classes, that would be standalone. So when you'll get your package, you will see it's broken down fall, winter, and spring. And you have a package for all 3 of those things. So the cost of attendance that you see will actually be about 3 times what I have listed here because it'll be for those 3 quarters. So trying to figure out what eligibility you have, you will see the cost of attendance, you'll see your scholarship and Texas Tuition Equalization Grant if you have it. Then you will see something called net cost. Net cost is basically what you can finance in loans. And then if you've filed the FAFSA and have accepted been offered and accepted the unsubsidized loan, you'll see that on there. And then, so if you take net cost, subtract the unsubsidized loan, what is remaining is your other eligibility. And sometimes that will be listed as alternative loan eligibility. Okay, so you know that cost of attendance is the amount of aid that you can get. So I think it's for the year, it's about $95,000 for fall through spring. You'll see that in your Bear Web. So you got to figure out, okay, how do I fill this cost of attendance? And keep in mind that you don't have to take out up to the full cost of attendance. That is just the ceiling on the amount of aid that you can get. Obviously, the first chunk of that, scholarships, Texas Tuition Equalization Grant. The next chunk will come from federal direct unsubsidized loans, which you get just by filing the FAFSA for my United States citizens. You get that $20,500 a year. A year in the government's mind is every fall through summer. There's currently a lifetime limit, $138,500. Typically, it is that amount, that $20,500. Will be spread out over fall, winter, and spring. Ignore the second part of this sentence. So you will not receive any of it for the summer. I'm sorry, ignore that. There is you obviously won't get the full cost of attendance or a full $20,500 if that causes you to exceed cost of attendance. Interest does accrue during school. So as soon as the aid disperses each quarter, interest will begin to accrue. These are a fixed interest rate loan, but they set interest rate for the next year's loans once a year. So for this next year, the interest rate is 7.94%. And then they have a 1.057% origination fee. Basically, that means say that you were taking out a $100 loan and had a 1% origination fee. You would have to pay back $100 worth of loans, but you would only ever see $99 of it because the lender takes that 1% off the top. Your cost of attendance will be raised to include origination fees if you take out the loan, so that the amount that you're getting is actually cost of attendance, not cost of attendance minus origination fee. These have a 6-month grace period after you drop below half time, which for us is below 5 hours. So for most of y'all, that will be when you graduate. Summers off do not count towards this, and they are eligible for consolidation, different repayment plans because they are federal loans. I know I likely will be getting lots of questions about I thought they're getting rid of federal loans. I thought they're getting rid of Grad PLUS, things like that. As of this date, which is June 13th, first of all, we don't know anything yet. But second of all, even if what is coming out of Congress right now is what's going to be, it will not impact you. It is only for people who do not take out loans. Their first loan is on or after July 1st, 2026. So if you're taking out loans this year, then you'll still have access to these limits to, excuse me, to the Graduate Plus loans. Pardon me. So you have your cost of attendance minus scholarships minus $20,500 federal direct unsubsidized loans. Anything else that you would need, you have some choices. The first choice and the most common is a Graduate Plus loan. That is another federal loan. There's no annual cap on that other than cost of attendance minus other aid. Like the unsubsidized loans, interest does accrue during school. They have an 8.94% interest rate for this next year. It's always going to be one percentage point higher than the unsubsidized loan. They have a little bit higher origination fee, so just keep that in mind. Once again, if you take out the max amount, your cost of attendance will be raised to include those origination fees. These currently have a 6-month postgraduate deferment after you drop below half time. They're eligible for consolidation and different repayment plans. You do have to apply for this one. It's not just offered to you automatically, but the only requirement currently is that you can't have adverse credit, meaning essentially you can't be bankrupt, you can't be in default on other loans, you can't have been in default recently on other loans. If you are not eligible for these, if you have adverse credit, you can fix your adverse credit, although it does take a little bit of time, and or you can get a cosigner. But the vast majority of our students are eligible for these because you don't have to have good credit, you just can't have bad credit. So recapping again, cost of attendance minus scholarship minus 20,500 in unsubsidized loans, then you have some choices for that remaining bucket. Kind of the other main type here is state and private loans. I encourage you to go on the Baylor Financial Aid website and look at kind of a preferred lender list, look at state loans. These are going to have variable or fixed interest rate, a variety of origination fees, variety of credit requirements. They're not going to be eligible for federal consolidation or repayment plans. Typically, they have pretty straightforward 10 or 15-year repayment options. I just encourage y'all to read those carefully before you apply for them. But if you or a cosigner have really good credit, these could be something to be worth looking at. If you are a veteran, active duty, veteran dependent planning to use VA benefits, you will need to work with the VA benefits office. I recommend that you do that now, kind of in plenty of time. One thing to note is that the VA does not send aid until after the term begins. So they will place kind of a holder on your account showing that the aid is coming so that your account will be settled, but you will not actually get that aid until after the term begins. So sometimes you won't get your refund until after the term begins. And then I'll just remind you again, federal work study, financial aid will not award that to you even if you select it. The only exception to that involves a discussion with our associate dean, and that would be after your first quarter of law school. So to recap all that I just said, your cost of attendance, that $32,000 per quarter, or in your case, about $95,000 a year, will be the amount of aid that you can get. First chunk of that, which will automatically be on there, will be your scholarship or Texas Tuition Equalization Grant. The next $20,500 of that, if you file your FAFSA, will be your federal direct unsubsidized loans, and then anything else that you would want. You could do a Graduate Plus or a state or private loan. And then if you're using veteran benefits, those would go in there as well. Okay, so after you have been offered the unsubsidized loan and you accept it in Bear Web, and or after you've applied for the Graduate Plus, you're going to want to sign master promissory notes and complete entrance counseling. You'll be directed to do this through Bear Web and through the federal government website. And then the last step is to settle your account. So really anytime starting 90 days before a term starts. So you can do it now. You can apply for Graduate Plus or private loans. Those do take a few weeks to process. When your bill is generated is always tied to when you register. So y'all are going to register in July for the fall. So your bills will be generated sometime between the 5th and the 10th of the month after you register. So it'll be between the 5th and the 10th of August. Around that time, loans will appear on your account as estimated financial aid. As long as they're showing up as estimated, even though they haven't dispersed yet, they will be applied to your balance. And then those loans disperse either 10 days or a week before classes start. And then the excess, if you have excess, will go to your bank account if you set up direct deposit. So loans will typically appear in your bank account 5 days before classes start. The balance is due at the end of the month after you register. So in this case, at the end of August. But once again, anticipated aid is okay. So to recap, bills are generated between the 5th and the 10th and the month after you register, so between the 5th and the 10th of August. Soon thereafter, your loans and your scholarships will appear on your bill, and then that aid will disperse 10 days or 7 days before the start date, and then the balance will be due at the end of August. After the due date, if you're not settled, if you haven't done what you need to, you will be assessed a late fee. You won't be dropped from classes. Everything is not settled. Don't panic. You can come see our registrar, Jerry Cunningham. You can come see me, and we will talk about this more in our individual entrance counseling appointments as well. Okay, so some other factors to consider. We encourage you to live like a law student now so you can live like a lawyer later. So really be thoughtful about your expenses. However, there are some expenses that you're going to want to plan for as you're budgeting. A big one is books. Books are expensive. It is built into cost of attendance, but I do think people are sometimes surprised because you will need to get hard copy books. A lot of the first year professors do not allow you to have laptops, electronics in class, and students just prefer to have those hard copy books anyway. But those first year books can be expensive. Another expense that people don't think about sometimes are bar expenses, even in the first year. So here in the state of Texas, we'll have you meet with our Board of Law Examiners, which is the licensing entity for lawyers here in Texas. We'll have you meet with them during orientation, and they'll explain this process called the Declaration of Intent. And that is saying that you plan to apply to be a lawyer in Texas in 3 years. Now, I know some of y'all might not want to be in Texas. Different states have different processes, but here in Texas, that process starts when you're a 1L. They fingerprint you, they start kind of a detailed background on you. If you do that in your first quarter, it's $190. If you delay, it's an additional $150. And then in your third year, when you're getting ready to sit for the bar exam, you'll actually have to apply to sit for the bar exam. If you do that kind of early, it's $350. If you wait and do it by the deadline, it's an additional $150. And then you'll also be taking a commercial bar prep class through Barbary, Themis, Kaplan, something like that. Those can be several thousands of dollars. Barbary will be here at orientation to talk to you about their program. And if you're a Barbary rep or a Themis rep, sometimes you can get some money knocked off of those classes. Something else to keep in mind is inevitably to one or more of y'all, your laptops will break down during law school. You'll have to get a new laptop. That is how you will take your finals. That is how you will do your outlines. So you certainly want to have a working laptop. But as you're budgeting, just keep that in mind. And then the last category of expenses I think sometimes people forget about are suit, interview, travel expenses to these interviews. A lot of interviews, at least initial round, will happen virtually now or here on campus. But you certainly will need at least one suit in your first year, and then as you get into your third year, you will need a couple. And in your orientation binders, we have some suggestions about where to find suits, but you'll want to budget for that and any other kind of interview-related expenses as well. So some other ways to get money. One way is summer or off-quarter clerkships or internships. Particularly after your second year, a lot of them will pay. Depending what you do during your first summer, they may or may not pay. But we encourage you to, if you have a big firm job, for example, after that second year, or mid-size or small firm job, continue to live frugally and save that money and adjust the amount that you have to take out. Writing competitions. We publish a kind of periodic list of private scholarships and writing competitions. I say we, actually our Director of Student Life, Catherine Sims, publishes those weekly. Encourage you to take a look at those. They're typically for students already in law school. They require a little bit of effort, but there's not a lot of competition for them. Great way to make some extra money. I also encourage you, this is not on this list, but if you haven't, to check out the Access Lex Scholarship Databank, ACCESS Lex Scholarship Databank. That's a great list of private scholarships that you can look at as well. I already talked about kind of our upper level after first year scholarships. We also have a few small scholarships that are offered at what's called our Law Day in the spring, and those are offered basically to people who do particularly well in classes or who are successful in moot court or things like that. And then I encourage you to check with your local bar association. If a spouse or a parent are in a different city, check with their local bar associations or civic organizations. A lot of times they will have small scholarships. Okay, so I just threw a lot at y'all. You're not going to have to do much after you do it for the first year. You'll have to do this every fall through spring and then every summer. So not again until next summer if you're taking summer classes, or for most of y'all, not again until you're getting ready to go into next fall. I also encourage you to look at Access Lex Max sessions, talk with Access Connects. This will make more sense during orientation, but Access Lex is an entity that they're a nonprofit that really their focus is law school access and education, specifically kind of financial education. So Access Lex Max is free free financial counseling specifically targeted for law students. Access Connects is free individualized loan counseling for law students or alumni. So definitely take advantage of those resources. Encourage you to save for those future expenses that I mentioned, and then adjust your loans based on your experience. I gave that cost of attendance, but once again, that really is a ceiling. That is not what you have to take out. So if you find that you don't need that much, you can return loans. You can not take out as much later on in the year or in future years as well. And then the last question I get a lot is how to defer other loans. By and large, lenders are part of what's called the clearinghouse. Student lenders, I should say, are part of the clearinghouse, which basically we submit a list of everybody enrolled at the beginning of each term. They check the clearinghouse. And as long as you're on that list, your loans are deferred and in school deferment. If your lender is not on that list, first of all, feel free to call them and ask them. And if they are not a part of the clearinghouse, they will have an in-school deferment form. And when you arrive for orientation, you can bring that to me or to our registrar's team. We can get that signed for you. Okay, which brings me to my very last point, which is contacts. I am always a great place for general or clarifying questions. First stop, you can email me, you can stop by. Director Bracelin as well can answer some of those initial questions. If you have specific account questions or if I can't answer, I'm going to probably pass you on to the One Stop, which is kind of main Baylor financial aid. It's over on the main campus. There is kind of a cashier's phone number, a financial aid phone number. Yes, cashier now is actually student accounts. And then there's a link to contact them. If you ever have a less than positive experience with that office, please let me know. Sometimes I can kind of get in behind the scenes, help figure some things out for you. And with that, I hope things are a little clearer about financial aid. Thank y'all.